All right, let me call this April meeting of the Federal Communications Commission to order. It's here in the CMR, as my daughter calls it. Before we begin, I'd like to briefly address the situation in Boston. First, on behalf of each of my commission colleagues and everyone at the agency, our thoughts and prayers go out to everyone who was affected by this senseless tragedy. Second, I want to say on behalf of all of us, thank you to the people of Boston for your heroic efforts. The response was amazing. The first responders and ordinary citizens who immediately ran toward the explosions, not away from them. The marathon runners who went straight from the finish line to the line to donate blood. The doctors and nurses who dropped everything to treat the injured. All of these amazing people together minimized the casualties and demonstrated the character of the American people. They reminded us once again that the best of America will always overcome even the worst of attacks. Now, of course, the events in Boston raised issues around communications and public safety that the Commission has been working on. Wireless networks were so overwhelmed by the temporary surge in traffic that there were reports, incorrect ones, that mobile services had actually been shut down. It's vital that people be able to communicate during times of crisis, particularly to reach 911 and family. Every day, modern communication services get more interwoven in our daily lives. It's essential that communication services be there when we need them. The Commission will certainly pursue this issue along with other agencies. This is an institutional imperative for the FCC. Public safety is a core part of the FCC's mission. The agency's Public Safety Bureau, under the leadership of David Turetsky, is focused on this. My colleagues on the Commission fully support this mission, and we will not let up as long as there's more we can do to harness communications technology to enhance the safety and security of the American people. One more brief announcement before we start. We have friends here from Myanmar who've joined us, as many others have done, to witness the Commission's proceedings, and I want to welcome all of you who are here today. With that, Madam Secretary, would you please introduce... Madam Secretary, will you please introduce our agenda for today?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning to you and good morning, Commissioners. Today's agenda includes 2 items for your consideration and 1 presentation. First, you will consider a second report in order to streamline the foreign ownership policies and procedures that apply to common carrier radio licensees and certain aeronautical radio licensees under Section 310B of the Act, significantly reducing regulatory burdens while ensuring the Commission continues to receive the necessary information to protect the public interest. Second, you will consider a notice of proposed rulemaking and notice of inquiry on expanding direct access to telephone numbers to promote competition and innovation by IP-based providers while protecting consumers and the reliability of phone calls. You will also consider an order to allow a limited trial of direct access to numbers for VoIP providers. Last on your agenda, you will hear a status report on alerts to prevent bill shock. This is your agenda for today. The first item on today's agenda will be presented by the International Bureau. Mindell de la Torre, Chief of the Bureau, will give the introduction. Commissioner McDowell indicated he will not participate in today's votes.
Thank you very much. Mindell, the floor is yours.
Good morning, Chairman. Good morning, Commissioners, and good morning to our visitors from Myanmar. We're happy to have you here. It seems to be that it's a little family day, so Troy has brought his wife Stacy and I brought my son Sufan. So they're all here to be here. Anyway, to get to the business, it's a privilege to be here today to present to you the second report in order in this foreign ownership proceeding. It's fitting that this item actually is on the agenda at the end of Chairman Janikowski's tenure. It exemplifies what he's emphasized since he became chairman almost 4 years ago, and it's a comprehensive effort to examine and reform the Commission's existing rules. The report and order would take another step to remove unnecessary policies and improve the transparency and predictability of the Commission's international work. And in addition to the extraordinary amount of coordination that we had at the FCC on this particular item, we also have been working with our colleagues from the other executive branch agencies who have responsibility for national security, law enforcement, foreign policy, and trade policy. And as a result of these consultations, we're able to present to you today an item that promotes our Commission's regulatory reform agendas while continuing to protect important national interests. So before turning to the main event and presentations, I'd like to thank some of the incredibly diligent staff that from the International Bureau and others who have worked on this item. First, I'd like to thank the primary author of this, who is Susan O'Connell. And Susan is the 310 expert, the go-to person that anybody calls on common carrier licenses and any question they have. And she's really a national treasure. And I don't know what she's going to do after we streamline things. She'll be bored. But and I'd also like to thank her sidekick at the end of the table down there, which is Kate Collins, who works in tandem with Susan on all things 310. And Troy Tanner has been spearheading this issue since he got here almost 3 years ago, and he's my deputy bureau chief on this. And Jim Ball, who's not here today, is the chief of IB's policy division, and I know that, and they're the ones that were the drafters of this, and I know this has been a vision of his for a long time, as well as Francis Gutierrez and David Cratch. We have a couple of other people I'd also like to thank because we worked very closely with the staff of the General Counsel's Office on this. And so we really appreciate the advice and feedback that we got from Bill Richardson and from Neil Deller, as well as Kate Dumichel, who is on loan to the Chairman's Office from OGC. So last but not least, I'd like to thank the Chairman and the Commissioners for letting this staff-led initiative come to you today for a vote. And so now I will let Susan present the actual item.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. The second report and order before you today would overhaul and streamline the policies and procedures the Commission applies when reviewing foreign ownership of common carrier and certain aeronautical radio station licensees under Section 310B of the Communications Act. That is, companies that provide fixed or mobile telecommunications service over networks using spectrum-based technologies, either in whole or in part. The second report and order would adopt several of the proposals in the 2011 Notice of Proposed Rulemaking, as well as other measures that respond to comments filed in the proceeding, including the views of executive branch agencies responsible for national security, law enforcement, and trade policy. The order does not address Commission policies with respect to foreign ownership of broadcast licensees. Under the new rules for authorizing foreign ownership of common carrier and certain aeronautical licensees described in the second report and order, the Commission would harmonize the regulatory treatment of foreign investment from WTO and non-WTO member countries for purposes of Section 310B by applying the Commission's open entry standard to all such foreign investment in common carrier and aeronautical licensees. Maintain the current requirement that licensees request and obtain Commission approval before their aggregate foreign ownership exceeds the statutory limits in Section 310B. No longer require a petitioning licensee to identify and request specific approval for each of its foreign investors, and instead require such approval only where an investor's interest would exceed 5%, or in certain circumstances, 10%, and provide licensees with the option to seek early approval for certain future increases in investment by named foreign investors. Provide for additional flexibility, such as by issuing rulings to cover all of the licensees, subsidiaries, and affiliates where their foreign ownership complies with the licensee's ruling, and by eliminating the current practice of issuing geographic and service-specific rulings to minimize the need for licensees to seek additional new rulings. And finally, this item will codify the new rules. International Bureau staff estimates that the changes set out in today's item will reduce the number of Section 310B petitions for declaratory ruling filed annually by up to 70%. Staff also believes, based on our experience and interaction with parties who file such petitions, that the changes will reduce dramatically the number of hours that applicants and licensees will spend in preparing petitions, while ensuring that the Commission continues to receive the information it needs to fulfill its public interest obligations under Section 310B of the Act. The International Bureau recommends adoption of this item and requests editorial privileges. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Excellent item. And since it is Family Day, even though I think they'd prefer to be incognito, I do want to acknowledge my family and my kids who are here today to witness the Commission meeting. But with that, let me ask my colleagues if they have comments on the item. Commissioner Clyburn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Facilitating tower construction, providing more options for backhaul services, enabling greater use of unlicensed spectrum, promoting data roaming agreements, and repurposing spectrum for commercial broadband use. All of these objectives and subsequent proceedings under Chairman Janikowski's leadership are key to higher quality data services and more competitive mobile service options for consumers. But in order to take advantage of these worthwhile policies and fuel other actions to improve their networks, providers need substantial amount of capital for investment. Investment in wireless networks not only improves broadband capacity and other mobile services for consumers, it fosters economic growth and job creation. In a 2012 report by the White House Council of Economic Advisors, it was made clear that investment in wireless broadband networks substantially increases our domestic economic growth. One study cited in this report estimates that from 2003 to 2009, entities invested $11.6 billion in wireless and satellite technologies, and that capital infusion created over 168,000 new jobs during those years. Why should that excite us? Investment in advanced wireless networks can reduce our deficit, improve public safety, and bolster our nation's economy. That is why President Obama in 2011 set a goal of providing 4G services to at least 98% of Americans by 2016, and that is why we should and will continue to do all that we can to encourage more domestic and foreign investments in wireless networks. As this order explains, the process for reviewing increases of foreign investments and licensees under Section 310B4 of the Communications Act is an area where the Commission can facilitate greater investment in mobile networks. That statute in our case precedent also requires us to ensure that certain increases in foreign investment do not adversely impact important interests as national security, law enforcement, and public safety items. But we can and must substantially reduce the number of petitions and other administrative hurdles that parties currently incur when trying to show that increases in foreign ownership of U.S. licensees would help serve the public interest. So through the capable leadership of Mandel De La Torre, Susan O'Connor, Kate Collins, and other staff members before us with decades of experience in these proceedings, we have found several creative ways to exercise the discretion that Congress gave us while substantially facilitating more foreign investment in a more streamlined manner. By codifying our foreign ownership policies and procedures, we are encouraging more foreign investment by providing more regulatory predictability and guidance about the information we need to review and approve these applications. We have substantially reduced the number of non-controlling foreign interests that must be reported and removed unnecessary burdens in the filing investment applications. We have reduced the number of petitions that must be filed by eliminating the need for the U.S. parent to return to the Commission each and every time an already approved foreign investor seeks to increase its investment or its interest on an incremental basis. The staff also took the prudent course of coordinating this order with the United States Trade Representative, the Department of Homeland Security, the Department of Justice, and NTIA to ensure that these changes would not impede those agencies from properly assessing our national interests. Facilitating investment in our wireless licensees with our wireless licensees is a critical part of the national strategy to advance our wireless service industry and improve economic growth. These changes before us go a long way toward realizing this key objective, and that is why, Mr. Chairman, I am pleased to support this order.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Rosenworcel.
Well, I have to start by saying I have a lot of space here. I might just spread out. I might vote twice. I also want to start by welcoming our friends from Myanmar. And I also want to start by saying I appreciate what you said at the start about Boston, because if you doubted the importance of communications in times of crisis, this week provided us with some pretty awful object lessons. I was actually born in Boston, and though I didn't live there very long, I married into a big Boston family. They talk relentlessly about the Hub, the Cape, and the Green Monster at Fenway. I've also stood with them and watched the Boston Marathon very close to where the bombing went off this week. So it struck close to home, and I genuinely appreciate the comments you just made. The same, frankly, goes for the blast this morning in Waco, Texas, and I think it is just notice to this agency that we need to redouble our efforts and always think about how we can help strengthen communications in times of crisis. But on to the matter at hand. For American telecommunications companies to maintain their leadership in a global market, they need investment on a global scale. More funding means more digital age infrastructure and more innovative services. It means more economic growth. It means more jobs. So for the Commission, the equation going forward is deceptively simple. Our communications networks need an unprecedented level of investment, and investment requires clarity and predictability. In short, the Commission should strive to provide confidence for investment. Establishing clear-cut, understandable rules is one way to instill this confidence. That is what we do here, and that is why I support today's decision. We provide clear direction to licensees, making it easier to invest in our networks and access capital from around the globe. We remove unnecessary filing requirements, and as a result, more resources can be devoted to improving networks rather than pushing paper. At the same time, our approach is entirely consistent with national security objectives. We keep intact review of matters of essential national interest and maintain our authority to condition or disallow foreign investment that threatens those interests. Finally, transparency, efficiency, and confidence in investment should not be confined to telecommunications networks. Broadcasters are also facing an increasingly complex, multi-platform future. That is why I am pleased that the Media Bureau sought comment on a letter from the Coalition for Broadcast Investment seeking additional clarification of the Commission's foreign ownership policies. We should follow up today's effort by quickly reviewing that record and taking action accordingly. So thank you to the International Bureau for the experience and knowledge you bring to these issues and to this proceeding.
Thank you. Commissioner Pai.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A warm Mingalaba to our visitors from Myanmar. It exhausts my one word of Burmese vocabulary. And a very fond hello to all of the family members of the chairman and the commission staff here in attendance today. I'd also like to join my colleague in thanking the chairman for his comments about the importance of public safety, as is made very apparent to us this week. April 14th through the 20th, as it turns out, is National Public Safety Telecommunicators Week. And the events from Massachusetts to Texas serve as unfortunate but vivid reminders of the work that dispatchers across this country do every single day to keep us safe. At all times, but especially at this time, we are grateful for their efforts. Turning to the foreign ownership item. Today's item appropriately observes that foreign investment has been an important source of financing for U.S. telecommunications companies, fostering technical innovation, economic growth, and job creation. We are lucky to have this inflow of capital, for it is a truth universally acknowledged that constructing next-generation networks requires possession of a good fortune. In 2011, for example, wireless companies poured over $25 billion into building and upgrading their networks. This makes it critical that the United States remain the most attractive place in the world for investment in the communications industry. By reducing regulatory costs and burdens for common carrier radio station licensees, the measures contained in this second report and order will help us achieve that goal, and I'm therefore pleased to support it. But today's effort cannot be a coda. When it comes to foreign investment, one aspect of the Commission's policies still demands re-examination and, I believe, revision. Currently, we have a de facto ban on any foreign investment in a U.S. broadcast holding company that exceeds a 25% benchmark. Under our rules, then, a foreign company can indirectly hold more than a quarter share in our nation's largest cable operators, cable programmers, wireline carriers, wireless carriers, internet backbone providers, and satellite providers. Yet that company cannot own a similar interest in a single AM station in a rural town. As I've pointed out before, this makes no sense. It's long past time for us to level this regulatory playing field. For foreign investment can pave the way for growth and innovation in broadcasting, just as it's done in other segments of the communications industry. That's why, as my colleague pointed out, the Coalition for Broadcast Investment asked the Commission last year to modernize our current policy and evaluate foreign investment on a case-by-case basis. In February, the Media Bureau put out the Coalition's proposal for comment. We received the first round of feedback on Monday. I've reviewed the record and I find it remarkable that even at this early stage, the support for permitting additional foreign investment is overwhelming. Now, it might not be a surprise that industry groups, such as the National Association of Broadcasters, support these investments. But it's notable that at least 31 national minority and civil rights organizations do too, including the League of United Latin American Citizens, the Rainbow Push Coalition, the National Black Caucus of State Legislators, the Asian American Chamber for Commerce, and the Minority Media and Telecommunications Council. As these groups put it, quote, to reverse the decline in minority broadcast ownership, one of the most significant steps the Commission could take is to relax its strict application of Section 310(b)(4) of the Communications Act. By relaxing these restrictions on foreign investment in broadcasting, the Commission would greatly assist minority broadcasters whose survival depends on their ability to grow domestically and internationally. The comment cycle on the Coalition's proposal will end on April 30th, and I too hope that the Commission will take action soon thereafter. By ending our anachronistic approach to foreign investment in broadcasting, we can bring new vitality to this industry. We can increase access to capital, and we can boost minority ownership. In closing, I'd like to thank the staff of the International Bureau, including Mindel de la Torre, Troy Tanner, Francis Gutierrez, David Kresh, Kate Collins, and Jim Ball, for all of their work on today's item and for their ongoing efforts to review foreign ownership applications. But the Commission, longtime foreign ownership expert Susan O'Connell merits special recognition. Much of today's item reflects the knowledge and wisdom that you have gained over the years. And although the streamlining, as Mindell points out, raises an open question as to where you will direct your expertise in the future, we nonetheless appreciate everything you've done to make today's item a possibility. So thank you, and thank all of you for what you do.
Thank you, Commissioner Pai, and thank you, team. With this order to streamline and modernize our policies for reviewing foreign ownership, we take action on two key objectives that we've worked on together for some time. One, driving more and more private investment into our infrastructure and into this sector. And second, our agency-wide efforts for regulatory reform. This particular reform efforts will help, as my colleagues have said, increase certainty and predictability when it comes to foreign investment in U.S.-based assets. It will increase efficiency, reduce regulatory costs, and will help drive investment. We have and we will continue to look at every way we can to increase investment in this sector. It's why I was pleased that we put out the notice looking at the foreign investment rules in broadcast ownership. This action today, I'm smiling about it because Mindell remembers this too. In my very first days as chairman, I launched an agency-wide review of rules and regulations in order to streamline and eliminate rules where we can. The Commission should do that every day, just as it needs to look at new rules of the road where it's necessary to promote investment and competition in the broadband age. So we launched this effort. We appointed a special counsel for FCC reform, and we asked all of the bureaus and offices at the agency to take a fresh look at what can be done toward agency reform. We've made a significant amount of progress, and this is hardly the first meeting at which we've taken up a proposal like this. We've eliminated, in fact, over 300 regulations since January 2011, including some major ones. And the Commission and its staff continues to review regulations, data collections, backlogs, and improve processes across the board. I do want to thank the International Bureau, Mindell, Susan, everyone at this table for being a real leader at the agency in this effort. Among many other actions, you and your team have streamlined the international reporting requirements in Part 43 of our rules, removing 5 unnecessary data collections, as well as eliminating reporting requirements for 1,000 small carriers, leading to an overall 30% reduction in industry burden. You've removed the international settlements policy from the Commission's rules, allowing carriers more flexibility to negotiate commercial agreements for international telephone rates. And together, we're in the middle of a proceeding to streamline and modernize the Commission's rules relating to satellite licensing. This order today is an important step in our ongoing efforts at reform. As you've heard, it'll, in a number of ways, remove unnecessary regulations and regulatory burdens. It'll reduce regulatory costs imposed on wireless, common carrier, and aeronautical applicants, licensees, and spectrum licensees, by reducing the number of petitions by 40 and perhaps as much as 70%, as well as the number of hours it takes to fill out forms to process license applications through the Commission. It'll provide greater transparency and more predictability with respect to the Commission's foreign ownership filing requirements and review process. And finally, as we've all said, it'll facilitate new, rapid, more foreign investment into American infrastructure and into this sector, while continuing to make sure that we protect important interests related to national security, law enforcement, foreign policy, and trade policy. So thank you all for incredible work, not just on this order, but on all the work that you have done and will be doing. I mentioned Mindell and Susan. Kate and Michelle did terrific work on this. Kate Collins, Troy Tanner, and each of you who are up here who've worked so hard on this order. Let's proceed to a vote. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say nay. The ayes have it, and so ordered. The request for editorial privileges is granted, and thank you very much. Madam Secretary, next item, please.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, the next item on your agenda will be presented by the Wireline Competition Bureau. It is entitled IP-Enabled Services.
Well, Julie, whenever you're ready. The floor is yours.
All right. Good morning, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. The Bureau is very pleased to present for your consideration an item that takes cautious but significant steps to modernize the Commission's numbering rules. Over the last several years, the communications marketplace has begun several transitions. We see consumers choosing IP-based voice services over TDM-based services and opting for mobile services instead of fixed. These transitions suggest that it is time for the Commission to take a hard look at how we manage telephone numbers, an essential and finite resource. Our current rules were designed for a 20th century phone network. The item before you examines what changes should be made to reflect and facilitate the transition to 21st century communication systems and to encourage innovation while continuing to fulfill our mission to protect consumers, promote competition, and ensure public safety. I'd like to acknowledge and thank the Wireline Competition Bureau team whose diligent efforts produced the item we present today. Ann Stevens, Deputy Chief of the Competition Policy Division, Marilyn Jones, seated here, Attorney Advisor in the Division, Randy Clark, Deputy Chief in the Pricing Division, and Heather Hendrickson, Melissa Droller-Kirkle, Sanford Williams, John Pisklowski, Lynn Enkeldow, Rhonda Lien, and Claude Aiken. We also appreciate the input of our colleagues in the Public Safety Bureau, Enforcement Bureau, and Consumer and Governmental Affairs Bureau and International Bureau, as well as the Office of General Counsel. Finally, we coordinated closely with members of the Technology Transitions Policy Task Force, and I especially thank Henning Schultz-Rinne, Sean Lev, and Rebecca Goodhart. With me at the table are Marilyn Jones, Attorney Advisor in the Competition Policy Division, Lisa Gelb, Deputy Bureau Chief, and Bill Dever, Chief of the Competition Policy Division. Marilyn will present the item.
Thank you, Julie. Good morning, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. Telephone numbers are an extremely valuable and limited public resource and must be managed carefully to ensure that they continue to be available and that the telephone network operates efficiently and reliably. In light of ongoing technology transitions in the delivery of voice services, the draft notice of proposed rulemaking and accompanying order before you takes several important steps towards modernizing and reforming our numbering rules. The notice proposes to allow interconnected voice over Internet Protocol, or VoIP, providers to obtain telephone numbers directly from the two administrators rather than having to obtain numbers indirectly through carrier partners. We expect that giving interconnected VoIP providers the opportunity to obtain direct access to numbers will make our number conservation efforts more effective and reduce costs to VoIP providers and consumers. We also anticipate that the proposed reforms will encourage providers to develop and deploy innovative new technologies and services. The notice also seeks comment on whether the Commission should expand direct access of numbers to other type of non-carrier providers. To ensure continued network integrity and continued enforcement of our numbering regulations, the notice proposes and seeks comments on various conditions that would accompany direct access to numbers. The notice seeks data on how each potential requirement would affect market participants and consumers. The notice seeks comment on the documentation that interconnected VoIP providers seeking direct access to number must provide, and in an effort to conserve numbers, the notice seeks comment on whether VoIP providers should have to comply with the same or more stringent number utilization and optimization requirements and industry guidelines that apply to carriers. To ensure that VoIP providers are not building inventories before they are prepared to offer service, the notice seeks comment on what evidence these providers must submit to demonstrate facilities' readiness prior to obtaining numbers. The notice seeks comment on the effect that the proposed rules will have on numbering databases, call routing, call termination, inter-carrier compensation, IP interconnection, and numbering cost allocation. The notice also seeks comment on how the Commission should transition to any new rules we might adopt. Given the ubiquity of telephone numbers and a variety of innovative services that now use or potentially could use the numbers, the notice seeks comment on expanding direct access to telephone numbers beyond interconnected VoIP providers and the effect that direct access is likely to have on non-voice services and applications that currently rely on telephone numbers as addressing systems. Finally, the notice asks whether VoIP positioning centers should be granted direct access to pseudo-automatic number identification, or PANI, codes for the purposes of providing critical 911 and E911 service. In addition to the notice, the order establishes a limited trial of direct access to numbers by granting Vonage and other interconnected VoIP providers with pending petitions before the Commission a time-limited waiver of our rules to permit them to obtain a small pool of telephone numbers directly from the administrators. The waiver is granted pending the outcome of the notice of proposed rulemaking and will help inform the Commission's decision on whether and how to amend our rules to allow interconnected VoIP providers direct access to numbers. The trial strictly limits the amount of numbers these VoIP providers may obtain and requires them to comply with our numbering, utilization, and optimization requirements, as well as industry guidelines and practices and other conditions. During the trial, Vonage and other participants will also be subject to monthly reporting requirements that will be made public to provide an opportunity for comment. The order also grants a narrow waiver of our rules to allow Telecommunications Systems, Inc., or TCS, direct access to PANI codes for the purposes of providing 911 and E911 service. We anticipate that this limited waiver will allow TCS to better ensure that emergency calls are properly routed to trained responders at public safety answering points. Finally, in the accompanying NOI, we seek comment on a general range of issues regarding the Commission's long-term approach to numbering resources. In particular, the notice of inquiry seeks comment on whether there would be a continued need to associate telephone numbers with geography in the future. The notice of inquiry also seeks to gather a record on the potential benefits of disassociating telephone numbers from geography and the potential impact on public safety, disability access, call routing, and interconnection. The Bureau recommends adoption of this item and requests editorial privileges. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. Commissioner Clyburn.
Thank you. While I am personally unaware of anyone who makes calls from a rotary call, at least on a regular basis, though I suspect Brooks might be one, I know that there are thousands still in use. I retain fond memories, Mr. Chairman, of those overstretched cords, the constant moving and plugging in and out of that cumbersome device from room to room, because we couldn't afford all of those phones. And that cumbersome device, and even the frustration of that busy signal after it seemed like a long series of dials. It really wasn't that long ago, or at least I act like I pretend it gives me great comfort to say it wasn't that long ago. But as technology continues to rapidly evolve, we must maintain a meaningful process of crafting rules that will dictate how the next voice, video, and data systems will be governed. I feel that this order is yet another step in our understanding of how we will govern this space in the years to come. With a keen and steady eye towards promoting innovation, investment, and competition in the marketplace, I enthusiastically support this item. This NPRM contains meaningful and probing questions designed to answer in part just how much benefit may be achieved by allowing direct access to numbering. And I expect that we will proceed with caution in considering any regime change that will permit allotments from the North American Numbering Plan Administration and the Pooling Administrator. As the item states, improved number conservation, the removal of barriers for innovative offerings, and the elimination of inefficiencies regarding the need for VoIP providers to obtain numbers through partners are all worthwhile objectives that the FCC should strive to actualize in a sensible and timely manner. When it comes to the request for a waiver, which will allow Vonage to conduct a trial and directly obtain numbers from numbering pools, rather than through the current partnering regime with traditional carriers, I am supportive because I feel that granting this request would provide an opportunity for us to better understand how a VoIP carrier would function if freed from a legacy regulatory framework. This particular waiver involves a small sample of numbers that Vonage will use during this trial, 145,000 to be exact, where Vonage currently serves about 2.4 million subscribers today. And this, of course, will allow us to craft best practices that may be used in allowing VoIP carriers access to numbering pools, which may be an outcome of the IP transition, while not exhausting number sets in existing area codes. As a former state regulator, I know how tied communities are to their area codes, and I trust that this waiver will not result in any state having to split a community between two area codes. I am also happy to report that this waiver will conclude with a public comment period, allowing parties the opportunity for constructive engagement that will inform the FCC's next steps. Regulators and consumers will have the chance to share their experiences with Vonage during the waiver process as well, and those comments and the reports Vonage are required to submit will help inform the Commission as we decide on how best to structure the upcoming IP transition rulemaking. Further, integrating telecommunication system services with the pseudo-automatic numbering identification will enhance 911 call centers' abilities to determine where a VoIP call originates. The combined effect of these waivers is admittedly quite small, but we must keep the larger picture in front of mind when considering them. The IP transition is happening, and we must do everything we can to ensure that it is as smooth as possible for both the industry and the public at large. Knowing the differences between VoIP and traditional carriers' use of numbering pools, how long each holds a number and how long before that number can be recycled by another customer or carrier, as well as how this waiver has impacted state regulators and their customers, will make the much bigger step, IP transition, that much easier. One of the toughest challenges of a communications regulator is making sure that the well-intentioned rules we put in place today will not stifle the technological opportunities of tomorrow. The granting of limited waivers is yet another tool in our nimble rulemaking arsenal that should be embraced and assessed whenever possible to keep our nation on the cutting edge of innovation. I look forward to the comments from the NPRM as well as the results of the trial. Both will assist the Commission in moving forward in a prudent and well-reasoned fashion. And once again, I join others in thanking the Bureau for its diligent work. Much gratitude to Lisa Gale, Bill Deaver, Ann Stevens, Marilyn Jones, of course, Julie Beach, and others for their tremendous work on this item. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Thank you. Commissioner Rosenworcel.
I remember 18 years ago when my parents in Hartford, Connecticut announced that henceforth the childhood telephone number I'd always known would change. The house had not changed. Same collection of New England antiques, same drafty windows, same bulky telephones bolted to the wall. But going forward, no more area code 203. Welcome to area code 860. Not an epic moment in the lifetime of area code expansion. But I recall the mild sense of dislocation. I remember feeling that something was different because something had changed. What felt odd nearly 2 decades ago is now much more common. After all, the ways we communicate have changed dramatically. Our networks and the number of devices we use have multiplied. The link between number and place is still present, but that too has changed. People now move and take their numbers with them. Case in point, in my office here at the Commission, half of those who work with me have phone numbers with area codes that do not reflect where they live. And what is happening in my office is not unusual. It is happening across the country. With all this change, however, what still matters is numbers. They are still an essential part of our communications networks. They are still an important part of the way we connect, and they are a valuable and finite resource. We must plan for their use judiciously. We must plan for their use consistent with the law. In the Communications Act, Congress directed this agency to ensure that numbers used for communications are distributed on an equitable basis. The law requires distribution through impartial entities. It also reserves for the Commission exclusive jurisdiction over numbering, but specifically provides the agency with authority to delegate tasks involving numbering to our state counterparts. Consistent with the law, from time to time, the Commission updates its numbering policies to reflect how the ways we communicate change. A decade ago, in 2003, the agency expanded number portability to wireless services. For the first time, consumers could take their number with them when they switched among wireless and wireline providers. A few years later, in 2007, the agency again updated its rules to let consumers keep their numbers when switching to Voice over Internet Protocol or VoIP service. Both steps enhanced competition. Both steps were good for consumers. Today, we update our policies yet again to reflect further changes in communications and the technologies we use to connect. The way I see it, there are two critical parts to today's effort. First, we conduct a broad rulemaking and inquiry into the operational implications of providing interconnected VoIP providers with direct access to numbering resources. The time is right. We are mid-course in a broader transition to IP services. VoIP subscriptions have risen more than 50% since 2008 and now number 37 million. Navigating the transition to IP-enabled services requires updating our policies. As we do so, we must always keep in mind the four essential values in the Communications Act: public safety, universal service, competition, and consumer protection. I think this effort is consistent with that approach. To this end, I appreciate that we ask questions about the impact this will have on numbering exhaustion, routing, porting, and inter-carrier compensation. I also appreciate that it includes queries about the changing nature of the link between number and place, calling and geography, and home and area code. Second, we conduct a limited trial. We grant Vantage, a VoIP provider, a conditional 6-month waiver to allow direct access to numbering resources. This is a test. It will allow us to identify any problems. It will allow us to have a real-time laboratory in which to study issues. It will inform our process as we move toward more permanent policies. So I am pleased that the Chairman accepted my recommendation to require the Wireline Competition Bureau to issue a report at the conclusion of the trial, so we will have an opportunity to learn from the results before we move on to final rules. Given our shared interest in these issues, I want to especially encourage our state counterparts to comment on this report and the impact of this trial. The mechanics of this proceeding are complex, but like so many other things before the agency, this is a reminder of how the times we live in are transitional. My childhood home still has those bulky phones bolted to the wall. Some things don't change. But they are supplemented by wireless devices, internet connections, and technologies simply unimaginable 2 decades ago when that area code was changed. In the face of all this change, updating how we manage our numbering resources is the right thing to do. I support this effort, and I think a trial like this is a smart way to proceed. So thank you to the Wireline Competition Bureau for your efforts on these issues here and going forward.
Thank you. Commissioner Pai.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Telephone numbers are at the heart of voice communications in the United States. Numbers are used to connect one customer to another, to identify carriers in the public switch telephone network, or PSTN, to enable texting and multimedia messaging, and to route emergency calls. And yet, no one ever seems eager to talk about the LURG, or the NPAC, or the NAMP, let alone how to integrate those last-generation systems with next-generation technologies like the SIP, or ENUM, or PANI. Perhaps in part because of acronyms like these, numbering gets no respect. But this morning, numbers rightfully take center stage. We need to address this subject now because today's numbering system increasingly is becoming an anachronism. It assumes the dominance of old-school carriers interconnecting over time division multiplexed, or TDM, circuits using copper lines and out-of-band signaling system number 7. But that's not how modern IP-based networks operate. So, this morning's item comes none too late. It's been almost a decade since then Chairman Powell recognized that IP-based communications were the future and opened up a proceeding on IP-enabled services. Since then, interconnected voice over IP, or VoIP, service providers have proliferated, and consumers have fled and are continuing to flee the PSTN. Meanwhile, the Commission has gained invaluable experience and perspectives. It has managed a database to allow point-to-point IP-based communications via telephone numbers. It has established a Technology Transitions Policy Task Force. And it has heard from its Technological Advisory Council that the old TDM infrastructure should sunset in the next 5 years. It is time for us to acknowledge that the IP transition is upon us, that old copper-based networks are fundamentally different from new IP-based networks, and that our legacy regulations slow down the transformation from old to new, not to mention innovation and investment. Last month, I highlighted the importance of revising numbering in particular for next-generation networks as one task that we must undertake to facilitate the IP transition. Needless to say, then, I'm pleased that the notice that we adopt today takes a fresh look at our numbering rules, including those regarding number portability and numbering cost allocation. I'm especially grateful to my colleagues and to the Bureau for incorporating many of my suggestions. These suggestions related primarily to the upcoming trial that will allow interconnected VoIP providers to gain direct access to numbers. Most importantly, the trial now will place participants on a 6-month schedule with a limited geographic scope, which will help us identify and hopefully resolve any problems that might be unforeseen. And the trial will now require reporting from participants on what worked and what didn't, because we can't benefit from the lessons learned unless we learn the lessons. Additionally, the Wireline Competition Bureau will report back to us and the American public, of course, on the results of the trial, thanks to a proposal by my colleague, Commissioner Rosenworcel. All of these changes will ensure that the trial is a real experiment, one that will help us eschew opinions in favor of facts. Speaking of trials, I feel compelled to mention another critical one that's necessary for a smooth, successful IP transition, an all-IP pilot program. Just like the VoIP numbering trial that we embrace today, an all-IP pilot program would allow providers to voluntarily test the waters of the IP transition, in this case by turning off their old TDM electronics in a discrete number of wire centers and migrating consumers to an all-IP platform. Like today's trial, it would be geographically limited. Like today's trial, we'll need to include basic consumer protections to make sure that no consumer loses voice service. And like today's trial, we'll need to rigorously evaluate the results of that pilot program so that we know how to make the IP transition a success for all Americans. I hope that we undertake the all-IP pilot program soon. But enough words about that. Today is appropriately a day for numbers. I want to thank the Wireline Competition Bureau's leadership, Julie Veach, Lisa Gelb, Bill Dever, and the entire numbering team, including Marilyn Jones, who presented today's item, for their work on the item that we've approved today. I look forward to reviewing the results of the trial and moving forward with a report in order in this proceeding early next year. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. This is indeed an important set of steps we take to unleash innovation and to drive our infrastructure and our regulatory framework forward to a digital IP network in the United States. It's, as my colleague said, it's about numbers, but it's about a lot more. This continues our ongoing efforts at the agency to modernize our rules for today's broadband marketplace while promoting competition, protecting consumers, and ensuring public safety. This is where we started 4 years ago with our National Broadband Plan, which provided a strategic roadmap for the transition to all IP networks. And we've worked together as a commission to take landmark steps toward this goal, including transformation of our Universal Service Fund from telephone to broadband and the elimination of intercarrier compensation. We're doing this in the public safety area as well, as we've taken steps to speed the transition to next generation 911. And of course, I'm looking at Sean. We've recently launched the agency-wide Technology Transitions Task Force to continue to ensure that we move forward on this work and modernize the Commission's policies building on our prior work. This item proposes to reduce barriers to innovation and competition for innovative online providers of voice services. Today, those providers generally obtain telephone numbers through intermediate providers because, as others have said, they do need phone numbers to operate in our ecosystem. But the current system for doing that raises costs on innovators and creates potentially gatekeepers to the deployment of new services. So removing those barriers has the potential to unlock innovation, to spur innovative companies forward, and also deliver real benefits to consumers, helping potentially to improve call quality thanks to fewer handoff of calls, to promote deployment of high-definition voice services, and as always in the area of innovation, to lead to the development of products that we can only barely anticipate. Already developers have used VoIP technology to develop new security features like automated phone calls or text messages when an online user attempts to change sensitive data in a mobile app. Innovative VoIP technology is being used to rapidly deploy call centers and to integrate automatic voice and text features into websites. As I said, we can only guess what's next. Our job is to unleash the potential of new innovators to reduce barriers to innovation, to remove any unnecessary costs that they face. And as we strive to do this, we do have to make sure that calls continue to complete reliably. In a separate area, we've taken on the challenge of calls that are not completed. We've taken important enforcement actions and other actions there. We have to make sure here that we don't create new opportunities for providers to game the system and that we safeguard against the exhaustion of numbers. So today's notice asks important questions in all of these areas. These questions are also why we're proceeding with a narrowly tailored trial to test technical issues that have been previously raised in the record that will inform the Commission's decision-making. The trial will be a large number of numbers, but a small percentage of overall numbers to test giving VoIP providers direct access to phone numbers. We have safeguards in place if problems arise and a robust reporting and public comment process. Some over the course of the proceeding have suggested that a technical trial is premature, and I personally disagree with that, and I'm glad we're moving forward with it today. This access to numbers proceeding has been going on at the Commission for quite some time, and the record we've received to date has gotten to the point of being filled with hypothetical arguments back and forth, and it's become clear that this is the time for a technical trial where we know what we need to test, what we need to see, and the input that we receive will inform the Commission's decision on when and how to expand access to numbers. This is a complex process, as each of my colleagues has acknowledged, and so I want to thank very much each of you here who've worked on and presented this item. As with almost every item that we have, you're the tip of the iceberg of many throughout the Commission who have helped work to think through and analyze these difficult issues. Sean Lev is up here, has been working on the Technology Transitions Task Force. And, of course, this is another example of an area we're bringing together the talented lawyers we have at the Commission with the talented economists and the talented technologists has helped move us to resolve, in this case, a proceeding that goes back quite some time where the opportunities become more apparent to us every day. So I'm very pleased that we're moving forward, and I thank each of my colleagues for constructive input and suggestions on this that's produced a better notice. With that, let's proceed to a vote. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and the request for editorial privileges is granted. Thank you for excellent work on an excellent item. Madam Secretary, the last item of the day, please.
Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, final on your agenda today is a presentation by the Consumer and Governmental Affairs Bureau on the status of alerts to prevent bill shock.
All right, thank you. Take your time, but whenever you're ready, the floor is yours. Or the flaw, as they say in Boston, where I too was born.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. The Consumer and Governmental Affairs Bureau will present to you today a report on efforts to protect consumers from bill shock, unexpected spikes in consumers' mobile phone bills when they exceed their plan's limits. We are pleased to report that effective yesterday, mobile providers covering the vast majority of all American consumers now offer free and automatic usage alerts to help their customers avoid this troubling issue. I want to thank CTIA and its participating carriers and Consumers Union for all their work and cooperation. This has been a true public-private partnership aimed at empowering consumers. I'd also like to thank the staff of CGB for all their work on this project, which has resulted in a huge win for consumers. With me at the table are Mark Stone, Deputy Bureau Chief, and Deborah Broderson, Legal Advisor to the Bureau Chief. With that, I'll turn it over to Deborah, who will present our report.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. We're pleased to report to you that as of yesterday, approximately 97% of consumers across the country now enjoy protection against bill shock for voice, text, data, and international roaming services. Bill shock is the sudden, unexpected increase in a consumer's monthly wireless bill. Bill shock is frequently caused when a consumer unknowingly exceeds the monthly limits in his or her wireless plan for voice, text, or data, resulting in unexpected and often significant additional monthly overage charges. Bill shock can also occur when a consumer travels abroad and is hit with unanticipated international roaming charges. The Commission first took steps to help consumers fight bill shock when it proposed rules in April 2011 that would have required wireless providers to alert consumers when they approach and reach their monthly limits. The Commission reported at that time that as many as 30 million consumers had experienced bill shock. After a series of negotiations with the Commission staff to take into account the concerns voiced by commenters in the rulemaking proceeding, including consumer organizations, CTIA and its members agreed to send these alerts when their subscribers approach and again when they reach their monthly plan limits for voice, data, text, or international roaming that would result in overage charges. CTIA and its members agreed that these alerts will be provided without charge and automatically, requiring no action by consumers. Finally, the carriers agreed to clearly disclose to consumers the tools they offer to allow their subscribers to review their usage balances and to set their own usage limits. These alerts have been phased in so that carriers have been able to implement at least 2 alerts within the first year after the agreement. As the Bureau reported in October last year, all participating carriers successfully implemented 2 of the 4 alerts as promised, and we have seen a decrease in the number of consumer complaints about bill shock since. Today, we're pleased to tell you that all participating carriers have fulfilled their commitment to American consumers by implementing all 4 alerts. They each now alert consumers for all services when their plans could go over a limit and they would experience bill shock without alerts. To inform consumers of the alerts, the Commission in April 2012 launched a website that tracked the progress by each participating carrier in providing the alerts. The Commission has created an easy-to-understand table on the website that links to the carrier's specific policies in providing each type of alert that it offers. Again, consumers will receive the alerts automatically and without charge. The Bureau will continue its efforts to educate consumers about these new tools to prevent bill shock. Just yesterday, the Bureau hosted a workshop to spread the word about these new alerts and educate consumers. We heard from Consumers Union and AARP, the consumer experience with bill shock, and their organization's efforts to help consumers avoid surprise bills. We heard how for many consumers, even a relatively small shock makes a difference. And we heard from the carriers about their alerts and other tools they offer to protect consumers. CTIA, AT&T, Sprint, T-Mobile, and Verizon Wireless each discussed their alerts and ways their subscribers can tailor their experience to avoid bill shock by, for example, frequently monitoring their usage through web tools. The workshop is another step in the Bureau and the Commission's work to inform consumers about ways they can use technology to be more informed purchasers of communication services. And the Bureau's work does not end here. We will continue to monitor the carrier alerts, answer consumer questions, and take complaints and inquiries about bill shock. The Bureau appreciates the hard work and cooperation of CTIA, the carriers, Consumers Union, and the other consumer organizations that lent their efforts. Thank you.
Excellent. And thank you very much. Commissioner Clyburn.
It was great to learn yesterday that 10 nationwide and regional service providers in the wireless space, who together serve approximately 97% of the nation's wireless consumers, met the voluntary goal of providing 4 types of service outage alerts to their users. Steve Largent of CTIA is to be commended for his continued leadership on this issue. But I remain concerned about the 3% of mobile consumers, for they represent millions of wireless subscribers who currently are not benefiting from overage alerts. But I know and I am confident that if there are significant numbers of consumers who are still harmed by bill shock, that this agency, led by Chris Monteith in the Government Affairs Bureau, will answer the call and take appropriate actions and protect consumers when necessary, but they will also continue to encourage these providers to close that gap that for us is too wide. So thank you to Mark Stone, Deborah Broderson, and of course Chris Monteith for all that you do and for presenting us with this most informative report. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Rosenworcel.
There are now more wireless connections to phones and tablets in the United States than there are people, and we rely on these devices like never before. They keep us connected to our family and friends, our jobs, and our communities. They are a vital part of our everyday life. That is why it is more important than ever that consumers understand what we spend our money on. Because let's be honest, wireless plans have gotten complicated. Consider the dizzying array of options available: shared and individual plans, limited and unlimited voice, data, and text. To stay within a plan can require keeping track of voice, data, and text usage across multiple devices. Not easy. No wonder, then, that a survey from the Commission found that 1 in 6 Americans have experienced bill shock, stuck with unexpected fees when they unknowingly exceed their wireless plan limits. In a world where consumer choices are vast and complex, information is power. So it is critically important to get consumers the straightforward information about what they pay for and when. Because nobody should need to hire a lawyer to understand their wireless contract, and nobody should need to hire an accountant to explain their wireless bill. That is why the Bill Shock Initiative we are discussing today is an especially terrific effort. Starting this week, Wireless customers will receive alerts before they reach their voice, data, text, and international roaming limits. This information means they will no longer unknowingly rack up unexpected charges on their bills. It is a really nice demonstration of how information can provide consumers with the confidence they need to make good choices and make use of new technologies. But the Commission needs to remain vigilant, so I ask that the Consumer and Governmental Affairs Bureau track complaints related to bill shock that come into the agency over the coming year, and then produce a report summarizing their findings 1 year from now. We must be certain that we have put the problem of bill shock behind us. And going forward, we should look for new opportunities to provide consumers with more information, to provide them with the confidence they need to make good choices, and to take full advantage of the opportunities the digital age offers. I think that studying the data we already have, like the 400,000 complaints and inquiries the Commission receives every year, is a good place to start. So thank you to the Chairman, Consumers Union, and CTIA for pulling together and working to address this problem. Fixing bill shock means a better wireless experience for consumers across the country, and that's something worth celebrating.
Thank you. Commissioner Pai.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. After you open your monthly phone bill, your expression shouldn't mirror the iconic image of Macaulay Culkin in Home Alone, hands slapped across your face and mouth wide open in shock. So I applaud the wireless industry for providing free alerts to warn customers when they are about to incur additional charges, and to warn them again if they exceed their plan's limits for voice, messaging, or data. Transparency and disclosure can be invaluable tools for protecting consumers. As we've seen in the wireless context, this goal can be achieved just by letting people know what they are paying for the services that they use. Because pricing plays such a vital role in a signaling function in our free market economy, these efforts by wireless carriers also help the market operate in a more efficient manner. Of course, wireless carriers have a strong interest in providing good customer service. After all, a happy customer is much less likely to switch to another carrier. That might be why many wireless carriers are going beyond the benchmarks set forth in CTIA's Consumer Code for Wireless Service and are offering customers a wide range of user-friendly options to track and manage usage. As we heard at yesterday's FCC workshop on this subject, all major carriers allow customers to check on usage, whether on their devices or on their desktops. Some of these carriers even let customers adjust their plans without penalty in order to avoid expensive overages. Initiatives like these help wireless customers stay within their budgets. And in times like these, that's something that all of us should celebrate. I want to thank the staff of the Consumer and Governmental Affairs Bureau, particularly Chris Monteith, Deb Broderson, and Mark Stone, for their efforts on this issue. I also would like to recognize and to thank the hardworking FCC staffers at our call center in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. I had the pleasure of meeting with them in person in January, and I was impressed by their professionalism and their dedication in responding to consumer complaints from across this great country. For many Americans, the staff in Gettysburg are the face and the voice of the Commission. And in that regard, we are indeed fortunate. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. So 2 years ago, we announced a solution to a problem that was costing millions of consumers, hundreds or even thousands of dollars apiece, a problem we called bill shock. We announced that solution together with CTIA, the Wireless Association, and Consumers Union. And specifically, we announced that the wireless industry would, for the first time, provide consumers with free, timely alerts informing them when they were approaching their limits for data or voice on their plans and when they were exceeding them. The deadline that we announced today, then for full compliance was April 17, 2013, also known as yesterday. It was one of a number of steps along the way. And today, I'm very pleased to say that all of the carriers who have committed have fulfilled their commitments. This represents these are carriers who represent 97% of consumers in the U.S. I agree with Commissioner Clyburn. The other 3% will be following very soon. Thanks to this public-private collaboration, tens of millions of U.S. wireless consumers will now be empowered with the information they need to avoid overage charges. Many of us already have experienced these alerts because the industry has been putting them in place step by step. I know that I have. And as a result of this initiative, this is a more common experience to consumers all over the country. It's free, you get it, and you're empowered with information. One of the elements of this that was important to me, and I'm pleased has become an institutional goal of the agency, is harnessing technology to help solve the problems that technology is creating, and using technology-based transparency and disclosure to help solve the challenges that come with new devices with complex plans and cost structures. This kind of work helps make the market work better, ends up benefiting everyone in our ecosystem. This is something that we identified, as I mentioned, as a real problem in need of a response. We knew that based on the complaints we were receiving. Consumers Union had done an important study showing that 1 in 5 consumers had experienced this end-of-the-month bill shock. We held a public forum and had a number of consumers who had experienced bill shock. We met a woman who had incurred literally $34,000 in international roaming after she had visited her sister in Haiti after the 2009 earthquake. Now, $34,000 is not the typical problem that people run into. But 1 in 5 consumers have experienced bill shock in the range of hundreds of dollars or low thousands of dollars. That's a lot of money, particularly for consumers all over the country, and particularly in times of economic difficulty. It's simply outrageous. And so I was pleased that we were able to quickly reach a solution and a step forward with both Consumers Union working very closely with us and the wireless industry, reaching something that everyone said, this makes sense and we can move forward and put it in place quickly. We took, as I said at the time, a trust but verify approach to ensure that carriers would take the steps that they committed to. We've received regular reports. We've put those reports online. And as you've heard, yesterday was a critical milestone in the rollout plan, and that milestone has been hit. Now, the Commission will remain vigilant in ensuring that the commitment remains in force. We encourage consumers to let us know if they experience any problems. I'm confident that this straightforward solution is something that's now part of the ecosystem, and I'm also confident that the Commission, led by its Consumer Bureau and supported by all the commissioners, will continue its important work to identify challenges to consumers that come along with all the extraordinary benefits that new communications technologies provide, and work in a serious way to make sure that consumers are protected and empowered in this new and evolving world. So thank you all. I want to thank the Consumer Bureau not only for this. This particular action is part of a series of steps that the Consumer Bureau has led over the last few years to empower and protect consumers, new rules to protect landline consumers from cramming, stronger protection from unwanted robocalls, among others. We'll continue to work on these issues. For example, we'll continue to work on the critical issue of how to preserve consumers' ability to unlock their mobile phones. We've assembled a cross-bureau team, and they're moving forward to address that problem. The agreement and action plan that the FCC worked out with the wireless industry and Consumers Union shows that public-private partnerships can work to consumers' great benefit, can serve as a model for solving future problems. The alerts that we're reporting on today will allow consumers to continue to enjoy the benefits of mobile without fear of unexpected hits to their wallets. So thank you, all of you, Chris, Deborah, Mark, the team that's behind you on this. It's an important development, one that consumers across the country appreciate. So thank you very much. We don't need a vote on this report, but we're very much appreciative. And let's proceed to close the meeting. I want to ask my colleagues if they have any comments on personnel. Commissioner Clyburn, I think you do.
Thank you very much. At the beginning, my colleagues from Myanmar left, but want to, hopefully someone will pass on once again a hello. I have forgotten just in 3 days how to say hello, but there's a male track and a female track. You know, see, you didn't know that, of course, yeah. I'm aware, and I was too scared to venture forth. But anyway, an incredible group of regulators, very dedicated, very new in the process, but dedicated, just like we are to ensuring that the communications on infrastructure is as robust and transparent as it can be. And as our nation continues to heal from Boston and Texas and the like, it just reminds me of just how special and incredible the human spirit is in this nation. The most unselfish acts of kindness and support that we witness. Once upon a time, I was a member of the running community, and I can tell you that in times of crisis, no matter what, when I was whining about this hurting and that hurting, there were people who were right there, that would make ensure that I was okay. And we saw that in full fashion in Boston. And again, my sympathies go out to the families and friends in that city, and again in Texas as we continue to heal. But just wanted to affirm that, again, we are definitely, as a strong American family unit, in sync with our brothers and sisters who are continuing to heal. And I am transitioning to another heartfelt, heavy-hearted announcement that I will confirm now this afternoon. In the departure of an incredible wireline legal advisor, Angie Cronenberg has been an invaluable member of my team for some 3 years, and the many successes and improved engagement realized by the reconstituted joint boards and conferences were in large part due to her wise counsel and laser focus. There is no way in the world I would have ever survived the open internet proceeding, thank you, Mr. Chairman, or Lifeline reform without her. She will truly be missed. Angie stood by my side through our review of the Comcast NBCU transaction, had my back on all aspects of USF reform, showed her commitment to public service through the movement and improvement of countless items like the previously languishing inmate calling service proceeding, broadband adoption and disability rights initiatives, and she has been my right hand, my right brain, my left brain, everything else, on countless and complex matters. I'm not looking over to her because I'm trying to keep it together. Angie embodies these key qualities, the key qualities every principal could ever hope for. Chief among them is loyalty. She fiercely defends the public interest and my interests, armed with an enviable command of the Communications Act, a formidable constitution, and yes, a good heart. This transition, as you can tell, will be extremely tough for me, Angie. But I am so excited about what is next for you, Robert, Jenna, and Wesley. Thank you, Angie, so much. We love you, and Godspeed. Mr. Chairman, allow me at this time to introduce to some and present to others Rebecca Goodhart, who will be joining us as in the acting capacity as a wireline legal advisor. She has worked for this commission, as most of you know, since January of 2008, most recently serving as Deputy Director of the Technology Transition Policy Task Force and Associate Chief of the Wireline Competition Bureau. She previously served as a senior policy advisor for the Omnibus Broadband Initiative, developing many of the recommendations in the National Broadband Plan. She also served as an assistant division chief in the Industry Analysis Division of the Media Bureau. She holds a JD from the University of Virginia School of Law and an BSFS cum laude from the Georgetown University School of Foreign Service. Welcome, Rebecca. So again, thank you, Mr. Chairman, for allowing me to make those announcements.
Thank you. Commissioner Rosenworcel.
I just wanted to echo on those really lovely sentiments from Commissioner Clyburn. I know, Angie, you have been an invaluable resource to her office, and I also know that our state counterparts, through your work on joint boards and joint conferences, deeply respect your skill and your temperament. So I just wanted to thank you for that and wish you well for what lies next.
Thank you. Commissioner Pine?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Today I'd actually like to bid a fond farewell to two terrific members of our team, Taima Rahimich and Ben Tarbell. Taima, if you could stand first. Taima is a second-year law student at George Washington. She's been working for us since September. After clerking for us for one semester, she decided for some reason that we haven't yet figured out to come back for more, but we are certainly glad that she did. During her time with us, Taima has pitched in on a wide variety of items, ranging from implementation of the 21st Century Communications and Video Accessibility Act to an order dealing with airport squitters. She also had expertise in media issues. Back in Bosnia, when she was a child, she hosted a broadcast radio show. Here in the States, she studied in depth the career of actor David Boreanaz, better known to some as Angel or to others as Seeley Booth on Bones. And when she learned that I would be meeting with David on the set of Bones recently, Taima immediately jumped in and gave me a detailed briefing on all of his career accomplishments, which I then relayed to David and got the expression back that a restraining order would be imposed in relatively short order on me. In every case, Taima has handled her assignments with aplomb and with skill. We also saw early on that Taima had a really strong work ethic. Whenever she finished an assignment, she was immediately knocking on my door or someone else's door, asking for more work. Although Taima is unfortunately leaving our office, I am glad to report that she won't be leaving the field of communications. This summer, she will be working as an intern at PCIA. Needless to say, the wireless infrastructure folks are very lucky to have her. Taima, as we say back in Kansas, havala vam. Everyone in our office is going to miss you, and we wish you the best of luck in your future endeavors. Turning to another GW law student who is leaving our ranks, Ben Tarbell. Ben is a third-year student who has been with us since January, almost on a full-time basis. Consistent with the FLSA and other statutory requirements, of course. From his first week, Ben has made an impact on our office. He played a key role in helping with my preparations for the public safety field hearings that we held in New York and in the Bay Area. And he learned the ins and outs of AM radio, and I mean really learned the ins and outs, and got me ready for the AM radio revitalization panel that I was fortunate to moderate at the NAB show last week. He also spent more time than he would care to admit scouring the record of the incentive auction proceeding and combing through comments on a whole variety of issues. But Ben's talents, his real distinction, goes well beyond the narrow confines of communications law. He won our office's NCAA March Madness Bracket Challenge, a non-monetary pool, Sean, for you and others in OGC who might be watching. He also can describe in detail the various foibles of the celebrity contestants on the ABC diving show Splash. In short, he's a Renaissance man. Next month, Ben will graduate from law school, and later in the summer, he will go on to take the Virginia bar exam. I'm truly grateful for everything he's done for our office, and I look forward to staying in touch with him in the years to come. Thank you, Ben. Thank you. I also was saddened to learn this week that Angie Cronenberg is leaving the FCC. She is heading to the private sector and earning some well-deserved rest, as I and others in our office know. Over the past 4 years, Angie has been a passionate advocate for expanding broadband adoption, a level-headed negotiator in some very tough situations, and a thoughtful and inspiring leader of the joint boards on separation and advanced services. Most importantly, she's been a true friend to all of us here at the Commission. I know you've been an asset to Commissioner Clyburn, but you should know as well that you're a treasure to all of us here at the FCC, and we are sad to see you go, but we wish you well, of course. Last but not least, I don't want to steal the chairman's thunder, but I would like to congratulate Michael Steffen on his appointment as the FCC's Director of Digital Learning. I overlapped briefly with Michael when we both served in the Office of General Counsel, but I've gotten to know him better, of course, over the last 11 months that I've had the privilege of serving in this capacity. And our offices have worked closely on a variety of low-profile, non-controversial issues, special access, universal service reform, all the easy wireline items that really exhibit uniting, not dividing. But seriously, no matter how challenging the policy choices have been that we've faced, no matter how complex the legal thicket has been, Michael has always dug into the details and tried to find common ground. And I think that's something that all of us would do well here at the Commission to do more often. And given his experience and expertise, I know that he is an excellent choice to lead the Commission's efforts to modernize our broadband infrastructure in the United States schools and libraries. And I thank you for your past service, of course, to the Chairman's Office and to OGC, and I look forward to working with you in this new role. So congratulations, Michael, and thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. So, Michael, first of all, so pleased that we were able to announce the new position earlier this week. Many of you probably don't know that Michael really has been there from the start for me in the transition effort. Michael, who I hadn't known before, somehow ended up being my primary briefer on all the tricky ins and outs of FCC landscape, and I couldn't be more appreciative for that. And then when we were able to get Michael to come over to the Commission, there hasn't been a single assignment that you've had that hasn't ended well, and where the process wasn't run smoothly and professionally, including some of the most complex proceedings at the Commission, and ones in which there are very strong differences of opinion, as Ajit mentioned. So thank you for your terrific work, and this move now, continuing step by step, moving up to leadership positions at the agency was entirely well-deserved. I know as we were talking about it, I tried to make you feel lucky that this was happening, but the truth is the FCC is lucky that you're going to be leading this very important effort for our country. I want to thank Taima and Ben for their service at the Commission. Internships at the FCC are a great place to start, and we thank you for the work that you've done in Commissioner Pai's office. And Angie, I just can't thank you enough for what you've done at the Commission. It's funny, between Ajit and Mignon, we've had a greatest hits list of the last few years. There's been no shortage of issues where we really all had to roll our sleeves up and work together. And we do that directly among the commissioners up here on the dais. But the truth is the small staff on the 8th floor works around the clock on these issues and are very much the front lines of the challenging work that we have, both as we negotiate and discuss with each other, but also as we talk to all the outside stakeholders. These are difficult jobs to handle for a number of reasons. The volume of the work that comes in, and also the stakes and the intensity and pressure that comes along with that. Along with Michael, who's sitting next to you, the two of you really represent just some of the incredible talent that we have at the Commission. And Angie, your work has been just amazing, your commitment to consumers, the public interest, and fighting the good fight while also working together with all of us. So thank you for your service. We wish you well. And Rebecca, thank you for stepping up and coming up to the 8th floor. As you and I both know, you spent a lot of time on the 8th floor, often sitting right next to Michael as we tried to sort through some of the most vexing pieces of USF reform, and I just want to say that from my perspective, what was thought to be a very hard, difficult, complex process, the two of you, Rebecca and Michael, and others who were involved, made it relatively easy through an unbelievable amount of really excellent thinking, preparatory work, narrowing of the issues, and allowing us to have just terrific discussions about the hard choices that we had to make as a commission. And so, Commissioner Clyburn, I think you're very lucky to have Rebecca. She will have big shoes to fill, but you couldn't have done better in filling those shoes. So thanks to each of you very much. And let me just ask for a round of applause for all of the staff at the FCC who worked so hard. And I'm just going to ask for a brief round of applause for my family, mostly for lasting the entire meeting. This not an easy thing to do. We have practice in developing the stamina necessary for this. Our press crew does as well. I notice the staff and other people go in and out. But thank you all for coming here today and seeing what life is like at the commission. And I'm going to give my parents a round of applause. But my colleagues are asking for my family to stand up. Please. Well, thank you, and thank you for your support the last 4 years. Between 4 and 50 years, I think, is the range. Madam Secretary, please announce the date of the next commission meeting.
The next agenda meeting of the Federal Communications Commission is Thursday, May 9th, 2013.
Terrific. And thank you. And with that, we are adjourned. All right. It's a small group, an elite group of reporters here today, and I appreciate that.
All right, let's start with where we go.
Hi, Chairman. How are you?
I'm good.
Last week, the DOJ filed an ex parte submission on Spectrum, and as you are heading into your final weeks, Spectrum will still be an important issue for this commission. Do you agree with the general thrust of the filing that essentially the FCC should consider caps, weights, other measures to ensure that smaller carriers can access Spectrum?
Well, 2 points in response to what you said. One is, as you said, Spectrum-related issues will continue to be a high priority at the Commission for a very long time, both addressing the Spectrum crunch and freeing up more spectrum for all mobile carriers and ensuring a competitive landscape. We've seen in the last 2 or 3 years the mobile industry move from heading toward duopoly to strengthening competitors. That's a very good thing for the American economy, for the innovation economy, and it's important that it continue. The DOJ filing is an important one. It'll be considered very seriously in our proceeding, along with other comments and input that the Commission will have.
I do have an iPhone, just to make it clear, but the Model 500 is the best phone ever designed. Why shouldn't the FCC investigate broadcasters that use the racial slur Redskins on television or radio?
Well, I don't have a comment on that. If we have a complaint at the Commission, obviously we'll look into it under our rules.
Have you decided on a specific date that you might be leaving? And since this is the 3 weeks out, I believe, from the next meeting, how will that impact setting up a tentative agenda for that?
Yeah, no announcement yet on date or timing. In general, I would say, as I said before, the Commission's work will continue to proceed. You know this because you cover the Commission, but staff works hard every day. It's a terrific group of people on the Commission. Everyone is committed to continuity and to ensuring that the Commission fulfills every day the important role it plays in the sector. And so transitions happen at the FCC. This is another one, but the agency, and this is important to me too, the agency is strong, it's revitalized, it has energy and talent, and we'll continue to see for quite some time an agency pursuing the goals of driving innovation and investment, promoting competition, protecting consumers.
I've got a question for you about Spectrum. Competitive wireless carriers who are meeting this week in New Orleans still hope that you will circulate an order mandating interoperability in the 700 megahertz band. They say that a voluntary approach is not working and that they're making little progress in their negotiations with Verizon and AT&T. Is this a step you plan to take before you leave the Commission?
Well, I can tell you that it's an issue that is being very diligently worked on by Commission staff. Interoperability is very clearly an important goal. There are technical and record issues with that proceeding that continue to be worked on, but it's something that is getting very active consideration by the staff at the FCC. All right, everyone. Thanks. Is that your iPhone?
Okay, I think we have some questions for the Wireline Bureau on numbering.
Do they know when the chairman's leaving?
Do they have a number?
We get all of our information from you.
That's right. So, fire away. Paul, go ahead.
Paul,
Go ahead, Brooks.
I just see my question is going to be so simple. It's such an ABC question, okay? I think most people out there don't know how the whole numbering resources thing works. So if I'm a VoIP provider or something, how do I get a number?
So what typically happens today for a VoIP provider that's not a common carrier, not a telecommunications carrier under our rules, or at least, we haven't addressed that question, but for someone who's not holding themselves out as a carrier, like Vonage, what they do today is they partner with the carrier, a CLEC in many cases, and the CLEC, then being a carrier, already has the ability under our existing rules to go to one of our neutral numbering administrators and get numbers. And then the CLEC usually provides a whole suite of services to the VoIP providers that includes numbers as well as interconnection and whatever they negotiate between themselves. But right now, under our existing rules, to get numbers from one of our administrators, you have to be a carrier.
I've got another sort of background question like that. With the trial, could you just walk us through what will change in terms of call setup and in terms of carrying location number to the PSAPs?
So not much should change in how those things actually work. What we'll see is that in the numbering databases, numbers will be specifically associated with the VoIP provider's name instead of with the carrier partner's name. So in terms of routing, when entities are routing their calls, the calls will be directly associated with the VoIP providers instead of with the carrier partners.
Go ahead. No, I just didn't think anybody else.
So just to clarify, so it will be a 6-month waiver trial. The waiver granted and will begin a 6-month trial. So now that trial applies to all interconnected VoIP services providers, correct, or just Vonage?
No. The trial is open to participation from VoIP providers that have already filed waiver petitions with us.
Okay.
So I think we have, in addition to Vonage, about 14 others who have filed waiver petitions with us since 2005. And the trial is open to participation from them if they file a plan with us, which is also a requirement on Vonage, and they agree to the various conditions that we impose on Vonage in the order.
Okay. So in other words, an interconnected VoIP provider who failed to avail itself of petitioning the commission for a waiver would not be able to participate under the trial.
That's right.
Okay. And then just, it is very simple, this minor question, but so the trial will begin when?
The trial will begin after the Bureau approves the plans that the providers file.
Okay.
So is Vonage the only company that has any company filed a plan yet? Because this kind of explicitly states Vonage and any other ones, but so far no company has filed a plan?
The reason the order talks about Vonage is because Vonage has already stated on the record that it will comply with various conditions, but all the providers need to file plans with us, including Vonage, which would then be approved if they're consistent with the terms of the order.
Could you go into any detail on some of the specifics of the conditions?
They go into the number, the amount of numbers available, the geography of where they're available, reporting requirements, and so forth. The item should be out. There should not be a long delay before release, a day or two. So I'll leave most of the details to the specifics of the item.
Could you talk a little bit? I noticed in the public notice or the press release that it talks about a stricter limit on new numbers. You can have a certain percentage of existing numbers and a very small, I think is what it said, number of new numbers. And is there a reason for that? Because it seems administratively simpler with a new number just to give it directly rather than to kind of go back and backfill on numbers that have already been assigned.
So there are really two aspects to the trial, as you point out. For part of it, the participating providers can take 5% of the numbers already that they're using via their carrier partners and have those assigned directly to them in the databases. For the other part, to the extent they win new customers, they can obtain new numbers from numbering databases, a very limited number of new numbers from numbering databases, and assign those directly in the database for themselves. Those are testing sort of two different things as part of the trial, so we thought it was helpful to us in developing the record to see how both of those processes work. But also, if we focused only on new numbers, then we'd basically be asking those VoIP providers only to have participate in the trial new customers that they win or customers who are maybe want a second number or something like that, which could have made the trial a little bit less robust.
Okay. And just as a follow-up, in terms of how you're going to know what the results are saying to you, are you going to require any kind of backward reporting on the capability, the functionality, how things were working before the number was transitioned directly to the VoIP provider? I mean, how do you know whether things are better and worse without some kind of data on ones that don't get transitioned or before they were transitioned? So
there will be ongoing reporting obligations that get specific as to any problems that arise during the trial. I think the record hasn't revealed a lot of problems today because the numbers are assigned directly to the carrier partner, just like they are for example, a Verizon wireline customer here in Washington, D.C. So the record really hasn't reflected a lot of problems today.
We hear a lot about that the numbers are valuable, and I've read statistics that most people would not switch a carrier if they couldn't take their number with them. How much is a number worth?
I can't answer that because it's unlawful to buy and sell them. When I mentioned before that the VoIP providers get numbers from CLEX, they get those as part of a suite of services, so there's no price on the numbers. But that said, it's a limited finite resource, and obviously we have a lot of interest in people who can't get direct access to it today who want to have access. But, I'm not an economist, but I don't think even they could put a dollar value on it without the data that we can't have because they can't be bought and sold.
I think there are some administrative charges that the CLECs do charge the VoIP providers, but it's a nominal thing. It's not. I think it's less than $1 a month or something. It's not a great deal.
One or two more. So as part of the order, the Bureau must report back to the Commission on the progress of the trial. So I'm hoping to glean your insights on what you're looking for in this 6-month period. I mean, is the major concern the fluidity of the process, and perhaps introducing new players into this system? I mean, what really are you going to be looking for?
So all of those things, we're going to be looking for any problems that arise in routing the calls, our calls being routed properly. We're going to be looking at whether there are any problems with interconnection. For example, if a VoIP provider has direct access to numbers, it's one step closer to being able to interconnect directly with another provider without having to go through a CLEC partner. So we're going to be asking about looking at that, whether that was facilitated, whether it works. We're going to be looking at whether there were any disputes about inter-carrier compensation, whether our rules need to be amended in any ways along those lines. But the record leading up to now has had a lot of, there's been a lot of back and forth over mostly technical issues about routing and interconnection, and so those are the things that we'll be focused on in the report, and we're also seeking further comment on in the NPRM.
Okay, last question.
I just had one question about Commissioner Clyburn had mentioned a figure. I think she said 145,000 numbers. Is that the number, the up to 5% number? Is that
approximately, yes.
And that would be the numbers, the amount of numbers that would be available to all of the interconnected VoIP carriers who would want to participate in this trial?
So the number that Commissioner Clyburn cited is approximately the number that would be available to Vonage based on the number of subscribers that it has today. To the extent any other providers participate in the trial, they would have a proportionate amount of numbers available to them based on their subscriber counts.
I think we should clarify that Commissioner Clyburn's number was aggregating the two pools of numbers, so the Vonage number would be more like 125,000 for the numbers, and the other 20,000 would be for the new numbers.
Can I ask just one more question, please?
So the 5% would be
But that would be Vonage for both existing
would be the
and
125 plus the new numbers would be the 20,000.
Just for Vonage, though.
On the NOI, okay, about divorcing the numbers from your geographic location. What advantage is there to not having your number attached to a geographic location like a 202 or a 205 or whatever?
The NOI is the reason it's an NOI is because we're just dipping our toes in this for the first time. So we're asking that type of question in addition to whether there are, not necessarily whether there are advantages to divorcing them, but whether there are reasons to keep the association with geography. I mean, as several of the commissioners pointed out, in many cases the separation is already happening with nomadic services and mobile services. And our geographic-based system was developed at a time when everybody got their phone from the local wireline phone company. So it's really just beginning a discussion about, is this still the best way to do things?
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Good.